In this fantasy that we are alive in right now, are we always fantasizing? Are we always believing in the reality that is present in us? When we see a tree, when we see a plant, when we see a textbook explaining where they come from, are we satisfied? Or do we want to seek more of an intimate relationship with existence, with God, with the question that is our own face once it's broken? It's there are very important things. When I talk about breaking here, I want you to understand that I am sharing new contexts, and new contexts are what really brings depth. In other words, even if you disagree completely 100% with what I'm saying, these ideas become another viewpoint of another human being in front of you in your recollection. Therefore, this is another option of a view, of context, another context of how the word life and existence is used, and many other words as well. I want to talk about fantasies here in this episode, and to kind of give my own views on how I see ideas and how I see a fantasy developing. We all have fantasies, I see a pretty girl, I'm in one. No, I'm joking. But, we have this mental cover. We have these ideas that give us a way out, but are actually blocking the way out. What does that mean? We want to achieve success, but we're not successful. We want to be that person we want to be, but we can't. It's as if life is telling you, not yet. You're trying to get there, life is telling you, not yet, buddy. Therefore, the reason it's saying not yet is because you don't have a clear idea on what's happening there, I want you to think about it like this. This is a very interesting idea. I talk very, descriptively about in my writings, but just as how you look at your past, how does your past look at the future, or is it gone? If time is measured, does that mean we have different experiences in each measurement? Does that mean the seconds are no longer the same? 1 second of this experience of time equals 1 second of this experience of time? And I'm not judging, but many people who lose sense of time understand the reason is because it's an idea and you don't naturally need to think about time constantly. You can choose to keep up a schedule, but that is again living a more organized fantasy. The importance of fantasies is that is a definition we have for the unreal, for that which does not exist. So those ideas we do not believe in, we do not see in, we don't acknowledge a connection to the ideas we have now. For example, I am sure there are many people out there who want to hold Gandalf's staff and Harry Potter's wand or something like that. And the reason I'm saying is because of the consumerism and marketing that is presented to children when they're given an option. When the mind of a child is developing, one of the first things it learns is to make a choice. And then after something wrong happens, the mother, for example, goes up and is like, take responsibility for your choices, the mother and father. But what that means is that to choose was the first thing you learned. You choose to say a sound. You chose to say the words, ah, or whatever your baby noise was, However, it is also very crucial to recognize that aside from the ideas we have planted in us to see the world through, based on where we were born and our proximity of different life forms around us, the value of experience is seen to be more valuable in an infinite spectrum than just looking at stories. I mean, would you be satisfied if I gave you like 1,000 hiking books, or would you be more satisfied if you went hiking? What I mean by that is choices are made and now you're here. However, when you look to make other choices, you are seeking solidified objects. You're seeking options. You're seeking solutions. Something certain, right? You're seeking slightly uncertainly how you're going to end up. A certainty. You want that certainty. You want that certainty to be, for example, the Wolf of Wall Street guy you want to be, or the monk you want to be, or the person you want to be after university. You're seeking a sense of certainty, but you understand the way you're seeking that certainty is always in the moment now, next thing. It's as if you are tunneling through your experiences. A word I never saw used, but I kind of made it for myself. Whoever who could use it, but it's called experience tunneling, where you're no longer caught in just one experience. You go through each experience. It doesn't matter. You just understand that will. We are not even experiencing our free will yet, because some people have doubts on their will. They have doubts. They think if they make the wrong choice, the worst thing can happen. You only make the wrong choice, or you at least get very close to making the wrong choice, when you think you're making the wrong choice. But if you feel confident in your decision, and when I say confident, it's an abstract idea. You need to understand it's a state of being. That's why it's not definable. It's a state of being which you don't have a reality of. That's how it was for me, for example. I was very shy. I was actually extremely silent. But not during my childhood per se, more in the school years. However, if I could somehow lead this towards the ending that it's destined to meet, regardless of the idea, regardless of an illusion, if there is an illusion, you're not there. You don't want to be that guy in the desert who thought he saw palm trees, but was not there. Be here. First thing you do in life, regardless of any mental work you want to do, is you bring yourself to here. You bring yourself here. Make yourself still, calm, right here. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of your face, everything. Be aware of everything. Then recognize that which is aware, that you are aware of the face, is on a slightly different view than you. So seek that which is aware. And when that becomes aware, it's as if you're seeking through a story to break the story. And that's a very hard thing to explain, actually. It's unexplainable, I think. I'm going slightly far in explaining where that goes, but regardless, there's fantasies at work. It doesn't matter what story it is. It doesn't matter if it's a scientific story or if it's if it's just the wind. It doesn't matter what you observe. But you must recognize that fantasies can serve you or can do the opposite. In other words, if you think life is a fantasy, you will get playful and very, in a sense, loose and open with life. You get comfortable with life when you become playful with life. When you don't take things seriously and you just keep playing, right? When you do that, you're no longer bothered by the past or the future. You're just here. So what do I mean? Let's see if I can explain this better. I want you to visualize your favorite game and imagine that you're sitting in a living room, for example, or somewhere, and you're a kid, and you think about, let's say, what do you think about? let's say you're thinking about what you're going to do next week, or how your childhood, began from nothing. And while you have those thoughts, if I suddenly come in the room and I'm like, hey man, let's play that favorite game, your attention will go to the game. It doesn't matter how many deep thoughts you're having. If something passes you by, your attention will go to it. You will come right here. It's as if, just as there are some ideas that are pointing towards the formless, there are some ideas that are pointing to the form. It's as if there's gravity. Ideas have gravity as well. There's a reason each idea is manifest now, and there's natural laws in how we communicate. In other words, we shouldn't be Noah's boat, thinking that we're the only ones, but to see that we are the wind that is blowing the boat. We are the ocean that is keeping the boat afloat. We are the wood. We are the earth. We are the existence that is with itself, open to all existence. A fantasy sometimes makes you too much of a fan to see what you're actually seeing. Stories are entertaining, and entertainment brings playfulness, and it brings you in a more interested state of being. But you also need to choose that you have hands, you have a physical body, you have ideas, you have a mental ability to calculate and move forward, right? Where do you want to be? Where do you want your last step to end? A question which is very, it might be intense to some. Where do you want your last step to end? And how do you want it to end? When I say last step, that means the last foot before you pass away from this life. Literally the last step you take, and then the next step is no longer in your body, or just focused to your body. Therefore, fantasies are giving you images which are going to relate to everything else in your life. Therefore, if you're watching media, you're watching all that imagery to relate to everything else literally you're seeing throughout the world. Your mind is exploring itself to discover that how can it explore anything else when it's creating the sense of self. Reality is simply a station, guys, because there are many different realities. There's many different stations. There's many different ways of looking at life. There's many angles in the room which I could see the center of the room. Therefore, if I can see from many angles, that means I'm a being that's not just limited to two eyes. Some things I don't even need to eyes, and I can grasp it, I can see it, I can understand it. It's as if before the internet, there was this existential connection, and then people solidified into a certain form, and then they were, only building with that technology, How you perceive your resources suggests how much you can be inventive, be an innovator, and to use those resources. What does that mean? That means a lot of people are using oil because that's the technology they know. That's the technology they see. And eventually we're moving to electric cars, and that's the technology we're going to see. But let's say electric cars came in and we went like couple hundred years. Then we would want to develop into the next arena. Therefore, consumerism is an infinite process of updating the product to each generation's suits, or whatever outline it comes through. Kids need to understand that when they said the concrete jungle, I think a reference to New York, it was a jungle because mentally there were tough things happening. There was fear, there was stress, there was calculation, there was desperation for advance, regardless. All these are present, for example, mentally in New York. Therefore, it's the concrete jungle because it's just showing you the concrete. It's the most wild influence. It's just showing you man's rule. It's not showing you nature. It does have some natural parts, but the community in New York is one of active, one of making money, one of like getting to the dream, to finding the American dream, right? You see, your dreams must begin personal, and then from that personal develop into other dreams. Because if it doesn't begin personally with you figuring out what your dream is, you will literally be in someone else's dream. You would be in someone else's illusion. You don't want to be in someone else's illusion. You want to be with your own cause. And your cause is not... See how much of an idea it is. See if you want to fight for an idea or you want to communicate a greater view. You want to see that communication. You want to look through your eyes and view something that is totally different than everything else you know in this changing and infinite and expanding world and universe. Existence. It's funny because we have many senses, and when you observe the senses, you think that you need to, for example, touch the clouds to see how they feel. You can't just see the connection of the to truly feel it there, right? But when you see that you're creating, literally there's like a creation point of origin within you, which is your self-awareness. And as it's creating with this existence, it is choosing to believe some things, but it is choosing not to believe some things. And those not to believe some things are also being created. They're being self-created in the moment. In other words, we create conclusions that may blind us. And it's our problem if we're making the conclusion that thickly. If you choose to only believe the first belief you ever heard in your life, then you will be a deaf man for the rest of your life. Don't be a deaf man. Understand there's collectivity. There's an underlining metaphor which such stories and references and fantasies point to. Once you take your shades off, your glasses off, you can see your real vision. You can see this is what you have. Self-exploration is crucial at this time, and not in the self-help way everybody's telling you to do it. It's not a self-help book. It's not with a book. I'm just saying this. I don't even want you to be even stuck on my voice for too long. I want you to just simply hear what I'm saying and go sit down and start exploring yourself. And once you've reached exploring yourself and you've understood forms of collective expression within you, then my other writings can serve you. Only then. You see, at some point, it's not about giving you books anymore. You just need to experience the next level. You see, I find that's what schools understand. Because it's work, it's a different act. And in school, they can't give you that. So what do? They're like, okay, we gotta, they're here for a year, so we gotta give them something. And they add things. They make their libraries bigger for you to think they're a better school. But simply, there's some things you can't receive unless you go out on the field. It doesn't matter how much you study about a sword. You need to pick up that sword, go into, let's say, that Greek gladiator battle scene, and right when Maximus is about to hit his sword into the wood, you're right there holding a sword and realizing your general's going swordless. In other words, that's a different form of experience. In other words, that's what I'm saying. I'm suggesting to experience. Getting slightly animated here with the ideas. However, to sum this up very quickly, fantasies are stories which are not real for you now, but you want them to be real, right? And you need to observe those and to see if you want to be that, if you want your attention to be that engaged to those ideas. It's as if like you have a bad habit and you're constantly focusing on the bad habit to such a degree that you're not doing the good habit. You shouldn't think about the wrong you've done. You should be aware of it. You should look at it and understand it, but quickly be the right. You guys, if it was that easy for you to be wrong, it's that easy for you to be right. Therefore, seek something that is more than conclusions based on belief systems you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter what we're comfortable with. We're temporal. We're just like the candle. And what happens with the candle? It gives its light and it's burnt. It's burnt out at the end. And you need to understand this whole story of enlightenment, it's as if you want to go your whole life without the candle being lit, or you want the candle to be lit. You can choose that. You can choose to be a hurtful human being or a helpful human being. You can choose this. You can choose if you, the candle, wants the light on. And if you do, that's what I believe Jesus Christ said, ask and you shall receive. Put it out there. Create that framework of reception for yourself. And understand that the hand that holds the lighter, which is going to present to you the light of your existence while you're alive, is not a hand you know. It's not a hand you see. It's handed to you through your recollection of who you are. Let's say if you were I'm really trying to choose a very good metaphor here to explain, poetic metaphors. I'm going to explain a couple things before I continue. Very quickly, I want to share a story that was written like 1,000 years ago, or maybe less, maybe like 800 years ago. And it's a very powerful story. It was written in a man's sacred hymns, in a very, very conscious human being. And he puts in, if I believe so, that there's this romance between this moth and this candlestick. And the moth and the candlestick are in love, where the candlestick has been burning its light to keep the moth warm, and the moth has been flying around the candle to be its friend. And all this in the whole story changes when the moth's wing catches on fire, where you see two lovers that were trying to do everything for one another, ended up burning their skin, burning their behavior. So in other words, that's one thing. It's a poem, and therefore, similarly to the candle idea I was sharing earlier, it is as if when you sit down and reach your point of mental dissolution, the light that you see is an identification with existence that's unspeakable. There's literally no word for it. And once you perceive that, you engage life differently. It's as if once you go to the movie theaters, you know how the movie theaters look like. You know, you're more comfortable in your everyday because you're perceiving more out of it. Similar to how someone's a stranger unless they tell you who they are. But if you know who they are, if you know what they are, if you know where existence is heading on a vaster scale that cannot be defined, then your knowing and your intuition is its own direction, always succeeding, because it never was in an area of failure. Therefore, fantasies affect you because they are still keeping you involved in a mental game with yourself. The solution to a lot of our problems and bad habits is action. It's not thinking. You shouldn't think about your problem. You should just act differently. Do something else, And, I'm saying this in the terms of progression to help advance your, self beyond those palm trees in the desert, beyond your mental illusion of the need to have a past that is judged by right and wrong. You choose that. You choose to keep it. You choose to feel miserable. There's no one else can choose for you to not feel miserable. People can help cheer you up, but if you don't choose to be happy, you're still going to feel miserable. It begins with a choice. And your choices don't need to get lost in stories, whether they're true stories or untrue stories, whether they're fiction or non-fiction, whether they're categories. Be comfortable with your vision. And see through any idea. See through any idea until you see the existential connection you have with it. In other words, look at a tree and see what is the existential connections you have with it. It's a totally different way of thinking. It's as if your thoughts, it's as if the mind goes on cruise control and your thought process is naturally being done just like everything else. Just like how you have a heartbeat, you're thinking as well. Your mind is active. You feel the activity in your mind, but because you're aware of it, you're no longer just centered in the body. You're a vaster sense of awareness. And your mind shifts as well, because the ideas you see and the things that you perceive are perceptions that are real for you, but not for everyone else. It's as if you have a different energetic body than we do, and that's why your experience is different, right? So you need to explore these things. You need to explore and see if all that you are as life is only what you see, or if there's something more. I believe there's something more in everyone. I believe everybody has treasures within them, which are higher states of greater awareness and ability. When you find these treasures, when you reveal these treasures to yourself, you realize they were always here. Think about what you share in common with the greatest version of yourself, and also the least greatest version of yourself. What do you have in common with these? Is it the thinker? Is it the thought? Is it the awareness to action? Is it a tree in autumn without its leaves? Is it truth covered with untruth? Are the clouds moving with your breath? Or is the sun a sun for many planets? It is definitely an amazing planet, the sun, and hopefully I will speak about it and my own experiences of it, however. Much blessings. I hope you recognize what stories you're reading and feeding yourself. It's just like food. The ideas you feed yourself, the views you feed yourself, they create distractions, and as you are distracted, you're not your most capable self. And therefore, because you're distracted, you don't want to be distracted, you want a cure, you want a pill, and you take drugs. But some drugs were not even meant to be taken like that. They're not drugs. It's as if we're putting a name on them and saying that this is what it is. It's as if civilization is creating its own definition of what these plants are, and it's not safe. These plants were not meant to be used just, recreationally. And now they are being used. It's as if some guy got the wrong idea back then. But even if they're being used now recreationally, how much are people aware of the capabilities they can have? Of not even capabilities, but different views and angles of their own perception they can have. You see, when we talk about reality, we realize it's not something you can talk about. I cannot tell you what is real. But if I am convincing, you would think that life is in this way. Therefore, our parents are the first ones to make us see how real life is. And therefore, everyone has parts of their parents in them. And it will show up probably later on, And to continue, I want to leave you with this idea that our vision can be formless like the wind and have direction. You can experience direction in formless states of self-awareness. And that is when the page is completely clear and your pen is life. You're no longer writing about life, about your experiences. You simply let the writing be done. You let your hand speak just like the wind through that connectivity. You see, I'm actually a person who really loves technology. But I understand that technology is avoiding nature. So because it's avoiding nature, nature should not be forgotten like this. Nature should be utilized well. We need to understand that we need to be able to heal ourselves just with the planet's natural presence. And we can, you know. You can, before going to the doctor, reach an awareness where even before the disease or the thing comes, you're aware of it. Be aware of your body. Similar to how you're aware of how you can be aware when you drink water and the water's going down your throat, you're aware of that internal view, right? Be real with yourself and you will see an honest reality. Do not be convinced by ideas you have not explored. Explore every idea, and that is how you explore your eyes. It's not as if you forget about your eyes and you sit in front of a computer screen and you seek the greatest truths. The greatest truths come to you when you are able to see them, when you are there, when you climb that high on the mountain, when you go to that place. Sometimes we have intentions as if I want to get here, I want to get rich, for example. A lot of people have that now. If you want to get rich right now, that's a different place, because the place you're at now is not rich. So how are you defining your wealth, my friend? Right? And many people are defining it by what they have and what they leave behind and their legacy. Even perhaps my voice could be seen as something I want to leave behind for my children. However, regardless of that, should the bird fly away from the nest for the first time? Should that bird fly looking in front of him or looking back? And you realize it doesn't need to think about it, it just needs to fly. You see, some people are parts of our purpose, and what that means is they are here to teach you some things and then go back to life. The trees that you see, everything you see in your moment, the voice that you hear, everything that is here is serving you because it's life, because I'm alive, because my voice might be more distinct than the sound of the wind or how the leaves speak to one another, but I am here. You are here, and there's a presence that can be seen very transparently. Again, I'd like to bring this idea that once you're done playing chess, I don't know who the chess player is actually, but this is a really good chess quote. And the chess quote says that after any game, all the players go back in the box. After you have created this life, you will detach from it after you have attached with it. Guys, detached creation is important, and that is what I mean by not being, fantasized by the fantasy as well. Not trying to be something you're not. There are different wavelengths where experiences like that can be real, but you need to understand it's a collective alignment here. It's as if, similarly to how I said earlier, the sun is a light on many planets. Similarly, the earth is how would I say it? The earth is a place for many types of people, many different forms of consciousness and self-awareness. You see, I see a lot of humans being born, for example, population growth being simply more color on the brush of life. It's as if this is where it's going. And it's as if the human part of it has fear. It's as if humanity looks at it and it's like, we're not going to survive. We're going to die. It's as if there's this idea of fear where we think we're going to go extinct. However, as George Carlin, a very interesting comedian, said, The Earth's been here longer than you. You don't know what you're talking about, right? In other words, there's a knowing, greater cosmic knowing that is guiding this planet. Think about the intelligence that is holding planet Earth right there in the center where it is, in its orbit, and think about the ability of that to align the planets. If there was some universal existential force to help align the planets this way, you're worried about what you're going to say in your job interview? You're worried about gunshots? You're worried about a planet that is locked and doomed? You see, it's okay to be worried and concerned and to take important action, which can come across as rebellion sometimes, but it's needed. However, outside of that, what kind of world are you seeing? What kind of world is the rebel fighting for? And I'm sure it's a better world, so you should be seeing a better world too, Che Guevara has this quote, which I like, and his quote says, "You can kill me, but you can't kill an idea." He understood that we are temporal, right? But an idea has a much more greater lifespan. Aristotle's ideas have a much more greater lifespan than him. It's as if he was here to birth the idea and then leave and perish into another form. And so many people are. And so, regardless if you are Tolkien's pen and you're seeing his imagination flow on the pen for the first time, your life is your fantasy, and it should be very clear to you what your life is. Check it out. And sometimes what you feel is a quick recording is actually a long release. Guys, always, I really recommend people to hear what I'm saying only in nature. Not only in nature, actually, you can hear it wherever you are, but hear it when you're around trees. If you're in your room and there's no trees, bring a plant in front of you and look at it. I want you to see real life. I want you to see grass, rocks, whatever. And when I say rocks, I don't mean concrete. Because concrete may seem penetrable. However, not the idea of concrete. The idea of concrete can be broken in an instant. Much blessings again. And hopefully the moment is always blooming.